This episode of Chains is sponsored exclusively by Charlie Foxtrot Brewing. Ask for beers from this veteran-owned brewery and tap rooms across Southwest Florida and Western North Carolina. Thank you for supporting our veterans. Chains, Part 21. Written by Dustin Dhonash. Narrated by Vern Henderson. The scenes of a beach trip I had taken as a child were mixing in with the terrifying situation there in that strange room. I could feel cool seawater evaporating from my skin, playing against the hot breeze. I was somehow floating in the water and the air simultaneously. The burns I had suffered earlier, the ones that were currently blistering and leaking, seemed to be happening to someone else in another galaxy somewhere. Same with my head wound. I heard Ms. Leah and several others chanting. I opened my eyes to see them standing over me. I needed to get away. After summoning what felt like the last bit of my strength, I raised my arms to push them away, but all I could manage was some mild flailing. One of them easily put my arms back to my sides in spite of the fact that I was pushing with all of my might. I knew I could easily overpower the majority of them, but something seemed to hold me back. The chanting felt like poison, and each syllable was pushing me back into sleep. I closed my eyes again and felt the pink and dark orange sunshine warming me. I could feel the sand between my toes as I dug my feet in. I knew it wasn't real, but in the moment it was the only security I had. The only thing that kept my mind from going off of the abyssal deep end of insanity. The cool splash of the water and the heat of the sand and sun rotated around my body in a pattern, switching back and forth so that no sensation stayed in one place for too long. It must have been some time before I was conscious again, because when I awoke there was no one. The scintillating feeling of the beach was replaced by a vague but deep itch that basically covered my body. My mouth tasted like some kind of industrial cleaner. I took a moment to breathe before moving. The moment I did, a roaring pain rushed back to my head and the room spun relentlessly. I pushed through that and sat up on the yellowed mattress that I'd been placed on. The rebar contraption on my leg smacked the floor hard, almost shaking the house. I'd forgotten about it. All I could do for the first minute was keep just ahead of my breath. I felt nauseous, but I knew that if I did anything other than breathe, I'd pass out. The clenching in my stomach and throat passed after a minute, and I tried some longer, deeper breaths to calm down. It worked. As I examined the leg brace, I found that it was wired closed, and it would probably take hours to undo the whole thing. I had no plan now. I was basically a prisoner again. It was then that I heard some commotion downstairs. I leapt up at the sound, forgetting my current state. I immediately regretted it. The weight from the leg brace threw me off balance. I hit the wall and smashed into a closet, knocking the door off the hinge. I heard the front door slam shut, followed quickly by the screen door. I was lucky. Whoever that was, they had just left the house. To be sure, I listened in silence in case some punk kids ran up the stairs to check on me. I had plans to put them back down them in a short, direct manner, but none came. I spun myself back around and moved the closet door that I'd graciously unhinged back off of me and onto the floor. To my surprise, the closet was filled entirely with some type of oxygen or sleep apnea equipment. All of the tubing had a dirty blue tint to it, and as I stood up to look at it closer, so did some of the equipment. One of the pieces I recognized as a CPAP machine, complete with a mask and tubes. It was attached to a pump or filter that had been taken apart. Over the top of it were several layers of paper towel that were dyed intensely blue at the center. On a small chalkboard, there were some instructions for the anointment and embrocation of his chosen. They detailed an amount of blessed tincture that should be applied. Behind the machine was a small shelf decoratively painted with the words, "The cure is found not far from the poison." And several apple trees were quaintly painted in, framing the words. Sitting on this shelf, in what was clearly a painted-over metal coffee can, was the blue liquid meant to be this blessed tincture. I took the lid off. I was nearly overcome by the sweet, almost burning smell. Faintly, I felt the effects of my dream again. The floating sensation, the alternating hot and cold pattern on my skin. This was somehow the smell of the beach. I sat back down on the bed and started pulling the awful details together. I'd been dosed with whatever the hell this shit was. It's likely that Mr. P had as well. I caught myself thinking that whoever came after me in this hellhole would get the same treatment, but I stopped myself. There wouldn't be anyone else after me. I was going to put a stop to it once and for all. I hurled the liquid across the small room. The impact of the can against the wall sent the liquid flying with the drops, leaving blue marks everywhere they splattered. Just at that moment, I heard the front door open and someone yelled breathlessly, "Mom, there's someone else here. I saw him creeping around the barn just before it exploded. I got cheap-shotted." I maneuvered myself closer to the door in case he ran up here. Sure enough, I heard the heavy footsteps on the old wooden staircase. The moment he stepped into the room, I planted my elbow in his chest with enough force to knock him back down to the landing. I knew from his injuries that he wouldn't be up anytime soon. A wealth of information has just dropped into my lap. Who would be here that they didn't know? It certainly wasn't Chris. Last I knew, he had a pretty significant injury, and cheap-shotting someone in a barn didn't seem like something he would be capable of while injured. I guessed that the woman they brought in as prisoner had gotten free and was doing some of the Lord's work all over the heads, faces, and necks of these maniacs. The idea of that brought some severely needed joy to my heart. The exploding barn sounded pretty interesting as well. Things seemed to have been going pretty poorly for them, even in my absence. I moved carefully down the stairs to the landing, but no matter how gently I moved my damn rebar leg, the weight of it shook the house each time. I'd have to change my approach. I was sure that I could be heard from a mile away. I hated to admit it, but seeing that great hobbled bastard in action gave me an idea of how to approach this. I remembered how he used the brace to build up momentum while moving, or leverage when we were on the ground. For as crazy as he was also smart. As I plodded down the staircase, I wondered darkly to myself what it would take to get to that level of depravity. I wondered how long I'd been between the pain, the dosing, and the insanity. I limped my way over to the kitchen. It was familiar to me, but I was having trouble remembering the specifics of the situation. The fact that thinking alone had a unique, exhausting effect was disheartening, to say the least. To cut through the mental fog, I found myself resorting to emotional memory. Gut reactions, I guess. In the kitchen specifically, there was a vague feeling of fear, but there was a larger sense of safety that I was pursuing. It was a strange way to navigate, but it was stronger than any other tool I had at the time. As I scanned the room, I started to remember the words, "Es ist ganz gut." The memory overwhelmed me for a moment and then seemed to snap into place. The fight, the passageway, the cabbage stomper XL, it was all there. I dragged my weight over to the cellar door in the alcove. It was open. The gentleman that I had swept under the table was gone as well, which put me back on high alert. Not that it mattered as much with 40 pounds of rebar announcing my every move. I struggled with the small steps down into the cellar. The brace was set as such that my foot wasn't actually touching the ground, but was resting on 2 bars welded into the frame. In addition to the extra weight, I also had another 2 inches of leg to deal with. The stairs turned out to be a literal crash course. I lost my balance just before the 4th step, managed to swivel around, grabbed the brace, and fell about 5 feet onto the soft earth of the cellar floor. I was intact after the fall, but it had all the wind knocked out of me. If it hadn't been for the supple Carolina clay, I'd be much worse off. I laid there for a moment and delicately let the metal cage down to rest on the stairs. Lying there face up in the cellar with my back to the earth made me realize how much a cellar was like a lived-in, decorated grave. I didn't have much time to dwell on that dark thought before I heard a scuffle in the distance of the long underground tunnel. If I had to guess, it sounded like the woman I'd seen earlier was doing a little more of the Lord's work.